Hello and welcome to this explanation of items from the Stone Age box by me, Mr. B, from mytopicbox.co.uk. The way it works is quite simple. I'm just going to take the items out and just explain some brief details with the aid of a fact file that will pop up. So we're going to start right at the top with number one, and I should say, teachers, if you want to pass it round, please feel free. That's the whole point. Right, here we go. So the first one we've got is number one, a deer antler hoe. Let's go to the fact file.
Okay, so our first item is this Neolithic replica antler hoe, and I can tell you this is really difficult to cut. This stuff, it's very tough. It was for sowing seeds in the ground. That's the originals, that was. It's made from hard deer antler like the scythe, which we're going to come to now.
And now for number two, we're sticking with the deer antler, again in the Neolithic, and this is a deer antler scythe. Let's go to the fact file.
So our second item is this replica scythe, which is also called a sickle in some places. This is Neolithic as well. In fact, it's made from the same antler that I just showed you the other one from. It uses the same glue as the axe, which is made out of, get this, it's made out of pitch pine from a tree, it's made out of charcoal, and the secret ingredient, which is rabbit poo. And it had small flints to cut the wheat, and I'm telling you, they were really difficult to get to stick in.
Now it's time for item number three, moving away from the deer antlers now. Going back to the Paleolithic, we're dialing back. We've got the Paleolithic, the Mesolithic and the Neolithic. We're going right back to the Paleolithic from a replica axe about 60,000 years old. Let's go to the fact file.
So now we have one of my favourites, this replica flint axe. I had so much fun making this. First of all, I had to get a piece of straight wood, which for this I used a wood called hazel. And I made it out of 6 materials. The glue we mentioned before, and there you go, it says it there, charcoal, pitch pine and rabbit poo. And I've also got some fake animal sinew around it. Now animal sinew normally comes from the muscles of animals, but of course I didn't want to use real stuff, there's no need to. So instead I used a wax thread that just does exactly the same job. So there you go, a replica flint axe.
Now we're getting into the Stone Age beasts with this item number four, a rhino vertebrae, or should I say a woolly rhino vertebrae, which is its backbone. Let's go to the fact file.
Okay, so we've got a great one here for our first Stone Age beast. It's a real rhino backbone or a vertebra. It's 30,000 years old. This one is actually an orange colour, you can see, and that's because it was found in soil that's rich in a mineral called iron, which always gives it an orange colour. One thing that some people think is that these woolly rhinos have actually gone and evolved into modern rhinos, but they haven't. They were completely separate. They're just cousins, if you like. So there you go, a real rhino backbone.
Now it's time for number five, and one of my personal favourites. We're zooming up to the Bronze Age now. With this, the remnants of a real Bronze Age axe head. Let's go to the fact file.
Now this is the first item I just need to say that might be slightly different in your box, because these are very distinctive items and sometimes things do need replacing, or I do have 1 or 2 versions of these boxes. So there you go, this might be slightly different, but it will be a bronze axe head that you have there. They are all 3,000 years old. It's made from 9 parts of copper and 1 part of tin, and whether or not you have actually got this one here, yours I guarantee will have this green look to it, which you only get from bronze that's quite old. It doesn't rust either like iron, so it lasts a lot longer. So this is great if you're an archaeologist. It means that it's not going to rust away, and we can get these objects from many thousands of years ago.
Now it's time to go back to the Neolithic again for number 6, this Neolithic fishing weight. Let's go to the fact file.
Now this one is a really intriguing little item. We do get quite a few of these now found on the coasts of on shores and under beaches and things on rocky places, because what's happened in the past, in the Neolithic times, they've been used to weigh down fishing nets. So you'd have several of these on a net to catch fish, of course, and they've torn off, and they're great for us because we find them. So there's a lot appearing recently with a lot of fishing going on around the coasts of different places. It's 5,000 years old. It comes from Normandy, this one, and it has a hole to tie the fishing net to. That piece of string I've put there, by the way, is what I've put on. That's not real Stone Age, but the stone, of course, is. Now the interesting thing with this is it's got this hole in it, and the hole is incredibly hard to drill, but I'm going to let you investigate that on some of the 360-degree views that do come with this. There is some information, there's a question about that, so I don't really want to spoil that for you now. So make sure you have a look at that and see if you can solve the problem of how they drilled the holes.
Now it's forward to the Iron Age. for this iron ore, which is also called specularite. Let's go to the fact file.
Okay, so this is our first Iron Age item. This is specularite iron ore, and you get different kinds of iron ore. Basically what iron ore is, it's a rock with iron in it, and you smash it up, you get the you put it in the fire, and the iron comes out, the iron ends up at the bottom, and you end up with this thing, this dust left, if you like, that's the rock that it was inside, and then you throw that away. On some of these, by the way, just to point out on the picture here, I've used a different picture because sometimes the things in the boxes don't look so good when I've taken a picture of them, so I've just used a little different picture there, so yours might be slightly different than this one, but there you go, specularite iron ore.
Now it's time for something that I think you'll all find interesting. That's number 8, the mammoth tusk. Let's go to the fact file.
So I couldn't resist using this wonderful picture of a woolly mammoth here just to show you exactly where this comes from on the tusk. So this is called the bark. It's the outside, just like the bark of a tree. So the orange part you can see there on this picture, it comes from there. Tusks were incredibly long, really long. If you think a big mammoth could be 3.5 to 4 meters tall, really massive, then these tusks, could get really long as well. This one was found in Siberia. Sadly, because of global warming, we are getting a lot more of these revealed nowadays, these mammoth items, and this is 25,000 years old, so that's a mammoth tusk.
Now we're getting back to animals again with number 9, a cave bear tooth. Let's go to the fact file.
Okay, so our next animal item is this cave bear tooth here. Just like the picture there, you can see this is quite a big creature. This was similar in size to polar bears. The tooth shows us that they were herbivores as well. So that flat grinding surface is where another tooth would have gone above it, just like your molars in your mouth, at the back of your mouth, for grinding up your vegetables, and in our cases meat as well. There was some discussion for a while about whether cave bears were omnivores, which means they eat, of course, both plants and animals. But we now think that there's a lot of scientists who think they were definitely just herbivores. So this is 25,000 years old, that's a cave bear tooth.
And sticking with the theme of animals, it's number 10, the Auroch tooth, which is like a big bull creature. Let's go to the fact file.
Now this is another one that definitely needs a picture to introduce it, because it's hard to imagine what this was like. What we're talking about here is the biggest, the most massive cattle you could ever imagine, with gigantic horns. This is from a cave painting in France where they ran wild there, and in fact all the way to 1637, that was the last one that died off. So it was a shame really that they died off, because they did live all the way through the Stone Age, and as I say, they feature in this 30,000-year-old cave painting here. So what a shame that they've died off, but there you go, the magnificent Auroch, and what you're holding, of course, is its tooth.
Now it's time for number 11, and we're moving away from animals again, although this would definitely have been used to skin animals. This is what we call a Mousterian hand axe from the late Paleolithic period. Let's go to the fact file.
Okay, so here we are with another beautifully made item, this time a real flint hand axe, which is actually called a Mousterian hand axe because it comes from a place called Le Moustier in France, and that was where a lot of the Neanderthal people lived, who we actually call, the technical name is Homo neanderthalensis, who were related to us, Homo sapiens. We were the last two humans left on the earth until eventually they died off and we were left behind. This also has stress marks all the way around it, so have a look on yours if you can see these little curled marks here on the edges, which shows where the person actually hit it. This is like stepping back in time, so have a look at yours and see if you can count the stress marks and find out where they hit it. That's a Mousterian hand axe.
And now with number 12, we're back to the Bronze Age again with this. Again, one of my favourites. I really love the bronze items. This is Celtic bronze ring money. You know what I'm going to say? Let's go to the fact file.
Now this one absolutely fascinates me. This was money before it was even money. It wasn't even designed to be money. Basically this was a way to carry around, maybe on a piece of string or a necklace or in a purse, pieces of bronze so that you could get them made into arrowheads or things like this. And of course it's turned into just swapping round pieces of bronze for different items, so it's almost accidentally turned into money. It is of course made of bronze, so it's turned green, just like the bronze axe head you saw, and there you go. I suppose you could call this accidental ring money.
And now we're back to animals again. They're never very far away in the Stone Age with number 13, the cave bear bone.
Okay, so here's another one for you cave bear experts. Now you know all about the teeth and the cave bear's diet. As it says on here, of course we know that already, it was a herbivore. But something else we can see off this, just like the tooth told us about the animal's diet, in this one you can actually see inside the bone. So your sample might be slightly different, it might be slightly bigger or slightly smaller than this, but it will have a part where you can look at the structure inside the bone, either at the end on this sample here, or you might even be able to see right inside it if you look down the end of it. And this tells us, this shows us where the bear's blood was made. So just imagine 25,000 years ago, this bone inside it was making blood for this cave bear that you're actually holding in your hand there. Like I say, it's like stepping back in time.
So if you've managed to catch yourself a real tasty cave bear, although good luck with that one, you might want to cook it. You might want to make it into a cave bear soup. You probably need quite a big bag to cut in, because basically this is a pot boiler. This is what you boil things with, by putting these hot stones in a leather bag. Let's go to the fact file.
Now these are, again, are really interesting items, because it's one of those things where you look at it and you can actually see the evidence of the use of this item. Because if you look at those cracks there, they're only created when you get a red hot stone and you drop it in cold water. Now let me just explain this for you. In those days, in Stone Age times, nobody had invented pans. They hadn't got to the Bronze Age or the Iron Age by that point. So so basically, if they wanted to boil some water to make a drink, or they wanted to make boil some food, some meat or some vegetables, the only way to do it was to get a leather bag, seal it with fat all the way around so it didn't leak, and then put these red hot stones in it from the fire, and eventually it would boil. Now I have tried this in my own garden. It does take about 30 stones to boil some water, but it is possible. So there you go. This is it's found in England, this one. This is a 30,000-year-old real pot boiler stone.
Now it's time for number 15, and we're going to the Neolithic pottery now. So this is Neolithic pottery. I'll explain more about it in the fact file.
Now here we go with this Neolithic pottery that is incredibly difficult to identify between Roman pottery. There's a type of Roman pottery called greyware, and these are often found together even though they're a few thousand years apart. They are found on very similar sites if they've been mixed together sometimes, and it does create some confusion, so you have to go to real experts to make sure that it's the right thing. But what you are holding is, to the best of my knowledge, some Neolithic pottery, and it's made of quite a weak clay, so it does mean that you do get a lot of breakages, and especially this was carried forward in the Romans as well. Especially with the Romans, they basically broke pots all the time, which is why you get so much of this stuff from different periods, even the Iron Age as well, all mixed together.
Now it's time for number 16, and it's the smallest one in here, but it definitely is one of my favourite because it's a beautiful little item. This is a Stone Age bead made from ostrich egg. Love this one. Let's go to the fact file.
Now this is a gorgeous little item which I thought would be best to show it in its proper form in this example here of one that was made in modern day Africa. So this is we think what it would have looked like when the Stone Age people wore it. They may not have had as many beads as this, but who knows, because we do find a lot of these in northern Africa, so it might mean that they did have a lot of beads on their necklaces like this. So it's basically from an ostrich egg where they've made a small hole in it. Ostrich eggs are quite big, of course, and quite tough, but I think it would have been a lot easier to get through than a piece of stone, which is probably why they used it. And of course it just would have been incredibly decorative. And another amazing thing is, as well, is we think it was also used for money in the same way that the rings were across Europe, the bronze ring money. So there you go, an ostrich egg bead.
Now it's back to animals again for number 17, the mammoth hair. Really interesting, this one. Let's go to the fact file.
Okay, so here we have one of my favourite items, the woolly mammoth hair. Now a while back you just couldn't get these, just like the tusk, which came from the same place in Siberia. You just couldn't get them because these places were frozen a lot of the year, all year round. But now they're exposed a lot more because of global warming. Sadly, as I said before, you get a lot more of this, and this was actually one of my cheaper fossils. It wasn't expensive at all. So it just goes to show how much of it there is around. But I find it amazing because it's what we call a true form fossil, which means it really is the actual genetic material, the organic material, what we call it, of the real animal. And you can see the real colour. So if any of you has got any red hair in the room, you might want to compare it to this, although I'm guessing that yours is a bit cleaner than this one here, as sometimes you find little pieces of dirt and also little pieces of plant material. So there you go, there's our real woolly mammoth hair.
Now it's time for a lovely bit of workmanship with number 18, the Neolithic arrowhead. Let's go to the fact file.
Okay, so here we are with yet another beautiful item to match the ostrich bead, I guess. It's absolutely gorgeous, this beautiful little Neolithic arrowhead, and you can't imagine the time they would have took to make what we call this a microlith. Lith means a piece of stone, microlith of course a small piece of stone. It would have been so difficult to get it so neat and tidy like this. Now I've decided not to show a picture of the arrowhead because you already have it in your hand, so instead I've showed you this one here, which shows the amazing different types of arrowheads you can get, and it's a whole area of studying arrowheads, because there's so many of them about, especially in Morocco in northern Africa. There are scientists who just study arrowheads all the time. So there you go, maybe that's something you could do when you're older, study arrowheads. So there you go, a Neolithic arrowhead.
Now you should know already that I like my bronze items, and here we are again with a Celtic bronze brooch for number 19. You know what I'm going to say? Let's go to the fact file.
Okay, so this is not our final item, but our final Bronze Age item, which is this beautiful Bronze Age brooch. There's a big tradition in Britain of brooches to hold your cloaks on and so on, and this is quite a simple design. We think this is in the Bronze Age, like I say, which is 3,000 years ago, but between the Bronze Age ending and the Iron Age ending, when the Romans arrived in AD 43, it was 843 years, and brooches really did come on in that time. So the Celtic ones got really more decorative and real fancy, and by the time the Romans came in AD 43, they started to have really fancy ones, so much so that you can actually pick up a Roman brooch and you can date from the whole period when they were here, 366 years. You can actually work out, or should I say, really clever people can work out exactly when it was. But this is a much simpler one from a few hundred years before.
Okay, nearly done now with the last one, number 20, a replica Mesolithic bone needle. Now let's say it all together now. You know what I'm going to say. 1, 2, 3, let's go to the fact file.
Okay, so for our last item we have this lovely replica bone needle. Now I wouldn't attempt to make this myself. I have made a few things here, as you've already seen, but this is just way too difficult to make. So basically what they do, they get an animal bone, and in this case the replica is made from a sheep bone. It's made from a sheep femur, which is a long bone at the top of its leg, and they scrape all the way around in the bone until eventually the middle pops out, and then they sharpen it. Now these things are very difficult to find. There is a phrase, and finding a needle in a haystack, and it's a little bit like that because they're so small, and some do get broken, but they are incredibly tough, believe it or not. So there you go, that's a replica bone needle.
Okay, so there it is. I hope you enjoyed looking at the contents of the Stone Age box, and you've got a little bit more information about what life was like in the Stone Age, some of the animals they faced, the difficulties they had in making the tools, etc. There's lots of tasks that come with this. The teacher will introduce them to you later on. There's also some stuff you can look at online, so I hope you really enjoy it, and good luck with your learning all about the Stone Age. Thanks very much for watching. Goodbye.